Reallyfe Street Stars. We're here with Jasmine Crockett. How you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful. I'm hanging out with you.
Hey, man, I like the sound of that. Man, it's very rare that we have somebody of your caliber in the chair. But a lot of people don't know who you are because you're not a rapper or a hip hop artist or something of that nature. So, would you please introduce yourself? Tell us what you do, and just give us a little history of your background.
So I kind of do everything, right? Okay, so maybe
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
So maybe not. So maybe not so much.
Yeah, you're gonna ask your own questions
right?
too.
So no, so I'm attorney Jasmine Crockett. I'm licensed in the states of Texas and Arkansas. I've been practicing law for the last 13 years. And I also am licensed in multiple federal courts in Texas and Arkansas as well. So that's a little bit about my licenses. And I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri. So I grew up in the age of Nelly and the St. Lunatics. So yeah, those were my guys growing up. And I've never been married. I don't have any kids, and I practice law. So I handle civil rights cases. So when the police are continually out here killing us, I'm usually one that's behind the scenes handling those types of cases. I handle criminal defense cases, and I also handle car accidents.
So, in your journey through law, you know, it's a very consuming journey. You know, it's a lot that encompasses going to law school, becoming a lawyer, practicing law. Do you find it time to find it hard to find time for yourself?
I do sometimes because I'm the type of lawyer that gives my all to my clients. When you've got somebody's life in your hands, it's literally somebody's life. Currently, I have one 17-year-old. Actually, he just turned 18, but he's in for capital murder. And the reality is that this kid may lose the majority of his life. Handling those kind of cases, it's hard for me to sleep. Or when I've got a mother that doesn't have her child because some law enforcement officer decided for whatever reason to take that child's life, it's kind of hard for me to decide that it's more important for me to kind of do my thing. But to me, it matters to make sure that I'm doing best by them.
I'm going off tangent a little bit.
Okay.
When you're handling cases like that, they weigh heavy on the conscience. How do you carry that load, that mental load?
So that's a little different. I don't know that I really carry it very well. I take every loss to heart, and it never leaves me. I remember my very first life verdict for a murder case. I'll never forget it. I replay that case over and over, especially when I'm headed into the next one, and trying to make sure if there was something that I could learn from that I did learn from that. So I think that it's a blessing and a curse because those that come out after others, you know, they have the blessing and the benefit of the fact that I won't let that previous case go. So I carry it, unfortunately.
And is it only defense attorney you do as far as, or have you done prosecution?
I've never prosecuted. I've always been on the defense side. I started off as a public defender, probably about 10 years ago or so. I was an actual public defender, and then I went into private practice.
Is it something that, of course, I know it led you in life to do defending, but would you ever want to pursue prosecution?
So it's interesting that you say that. I actually ran for district attorney when I was 28. So in the state of Texas, there are 254 counties. In those 254 counties, at the time that I ran, there had never been a black woman elected nor appointed in any of those counties. And for whatever reason, I felt like at 28, I could get it done in East Texas. So I did run for district attorney. I won the early vote. I lost on election day. But that was because I was tired of defending against bad cases. And I wanted to make the decision about whether or not somebody got prosecuted in the first place. And so I did run, but eventually I lost.
And even getting into law, you were majoring in something different in college, and you changed.
Actually, I was going to be an accountant.
Nothing wrong with that.
I was a numbers girl.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
And the money's in accounting, right?
To a certain extent, right? But the deal was I had a great background as it relates to my ability to deal with numbers. and it was gonna pay well. So I was like, I'll be an accountant. Unfortunately, around my junior year, I was the victim of a hate crime or two. And so were a group of my friends, all at the same time. Cars were keyed with the N-word. We received hate mail in our on-campus mailboxes. And at that time, my school hired the Cochran firm. And there was a lawyer who graduated from University of Houston who was assigned to me. And it was the first time in my life that I felt helpless. And I was like, I want to help people that are going through what I've just experienced. And at that point in time, I decided that I was going to sit for the LSAT. And I did, and I got a full ride to go to law school. So that's what I did.
That's amazing.
Now, with such a shift, what did you do to prepare for that? Because, you know, it was like switching from one dynamic to the next.
It was, but law school, it doesn't matter what you major in whatsoever. You can major in kinesiology or like whatever. It doesn't matter what you major in. So long as you can get into law school, that's all that matters. And they'll teach you everything that you need to know. So most people think you have to be a political science major or a history major or something of that nature, and it's just not true, or English major. It's just not true. I usually tell students, major in whatever makes you happy, because usually if you're doing something that you like, you do better. So you want really good grades. So it didn't matter. I still came out with a business degree, which has been invaluable for me. And I went to law school and got that law degree.
Now, what are we running for again? I know. I don't know if I heard you say it, so I want the people to know.
You did not hear me say it. So I am running to be the next elected state representative for House District 100.
And what is your plan? What do you plan to do? Because you know, we hear about people that want to run or want to change the community. What is your plan? Because I don't think because when you hear a person say, I want to make change in my community, it's so broad. And you never get the specifics. You never get what is your plan?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that. We're living in an age where it's just cool to be a politician, or you're just on a money grab. It's not the case for me whatsoever. Let me be clear. Number one, there is no money in state representative. Our state representatives only make $7,000 a year. And for approximately almost 6 months, every 2 years, you actually are living in Austin. So unfortunately, the average person really does not have the ability to run for state representative. And as far as I'm concerned, that's by design. I don't understand how you can have a body of people that supposedly represents the people, but none of the regular people can actually afford to go do it, because most people aren't in positions to say, I'm gonna take off for 6 months. Their job ain't gonna be there, right? And then who's gonna take off for 6 months to make $7,000? Like, you probably could have made more, because that's averaging about maybe a little over $1,000 a month. So it's just not economical for the average person. And so what you have is a lot of people that have a lot of money that go down to Austin and write the laws. And they've kept it that way to keep the everyday Joe from having the ability to do it. Most people are mesmerized when they see a black robe and it's a judge or something. But what I want people to understand is the real power lies in who it is that gets to actually write the laws that we have to function under. So if you're in a circumstance where you're saying, well, why is marijuana still illegal? Why are my black and brown brothers and sisters still getting incarcerated for marijuana when we've got over 30 states that have legalized marijuana in some way, right? Like, if you have a problem with that, while we do have a district attorney that is progressive that's decided that he's not going to prosecute certain cases, it's still against the law. So an officer can still come and get you. But if you have a legislator that's down there and understands that black and brown people don't use drugs at a higher rate than their white counterparts, but they are arrested at a lot higher rate, then you need someone that understands that, can convey that to the legislature and change the laws as they exist. So definitely I want to do a lot of marijuana reform. from incarcerating people to legalizing it, to the point that we actually have more money coming into the state because I believe that we should tax it. We use that money to make sure that we're putting money into our schools. So when they're saying, oh, well, we need to pay our teachers more money, well, where are we going to get the money? Right now, they're talking about, we'll increase the property taxes. Well, on the middle class, that's who feels it when you increase their property taxes. Whether you own the home or whether you're renting a home, if you're renting a home, I promise you, the owner is not going to endure that and not hike up your rent, right? So instead, let's just say, okay, let's stop putting people in jail for marijuana, which is costing the average county, say, $70 to $90 a day to house someone. Instead, let's legalize it. That means we've got more space for violent offenders, and then we can use that money to, say, put into education, which is something that we are trailing in the state of Texas. So I definitely want marijuana reform. I want overall criminal justice reform. I don't believe that people should walk around with an F tatted on their chest for the rest of their lives. I have a cousin who literally has not been in trouble for about 25 years, but she was addicted to drugs. And so she has these petty drug convictions. And while she went on to become Miss Plus America, and she continually is in the community advocating and doing great things, she still has this F on her chest, so she's still precluded from getting certain jobs, which I think is absolutely ridiculous.
No, definitely. It is a flawed system. You know, it's funny because every time, the way you're speaking, every time I scroll on Facebook and I see one of them state representatives speaking their mind and everyone else is kind of just staring at them like, oh, you know, I always love that because it only takes one to spark the thought of, you know, why are we thinking like this and change the norm. But you mentioned criminal justice. Of course, you know, we live in a time and a day and age to where, you know, social media is rampant and you're able to see a lot more of maybe what took place, you know, behind camera or off camera. And, you know, police are wearing body cams now. When you're able to still see these things going on, what are your thoughts before we delve deeper into the criminal injustice of not only Dallas, Texas, and just America as a whole? I know it's a loaded question.
My honest answer is that we've come so far, but we've really not gone anywhere, to be perfectly honest. Right now, we're still dealing with the same issues that we were dealing with or that this country has been dealing with since before I was born. It's just reformed in the way that we receive it. We were talking about NWA, right? So they used to rap about police brutality all the time. And that was their platform for making sure that the community was aware of what was going on. Now, at the time the NWA was out, I was obviously on this earth already, right? But these are things that go back even further than that, okay? So I think that there's been a progression of information that is disseminated, but it's not changed how anything's happened, right? It's just a matter of how much we know. So I think that there was a time where we didn't know what all was going on, right? Because there were certain segments that were able to control the narrative. So if they didn't want it in the paper, it didn't go in the paper. And obviously technology was not what it is now back in, say, the 1940s or 50s or 60s and whatnot. So we didn't have as much technology. And then you get onto the NWA level and then it's like, okay, well, we're using our platform. We now have this ability to convey this message through music. And that's what they did. Now we're at the point where any person, any random person can pull out their phone and record even when law enforcement conveniently cuts off their body cam or whatnot. The issue that I have is that the behaviors of law enforcement have not changed. Throughout all these years, nothing has changed. It's just a matter of how much information the world has as it relates to what they're doing. And I want real change. And that's what we're not really focused on, because if you think about it, how many times have we watched a video and we can clearly see that law enforcement was wrong and killed somebody and nothing happens? There's not even an arrest, there's no indictment, or there's no conviction. So we've really not gone anywhere. All we've done is made sure that we've put a magnifying glass on it. But when you think about what happened to the officers on July 6th, July 7th. No, July 7th. On July 7th in downtown Dallas, when there was that big march where there was the protest about Alton Sterling, and I'm forgetting our other man's name right now, but they were protesting those two men being killed in the same week, right? And it's like, but both of them were caught on video. And guess what? As it relates to state court, there were no convictions. I think in Alton Sterling, we finally got some sort of justice on the federal level. But other than that, we have to continually say that a black life matters, because based upon the verdicts that we see, no matter if we see it clearly that an officer just decided that he was afraid of our skin color, they kill us and nobody cares.
Now, as it relates to cases like that, has there ever been a case in Dallas that you've seen the verdict that you was like, if I defended that, it would have went differently? And what, if you have, what would that case be?
Where the verdict went?
It did, well, not that, just in the case that you felt like if you were a part of, that it would have been, the outcome would have been differently, whether it was somebody who was wrongly convicted or whether it was someone who needed to be convicted.
There are a lot of police brutality cases in Dallas that just weren't prosecuted at all. And I probably was not in the Dallas area when they came about, but their mothers, like there's an organization by the name of Mothers Against Police Brutality. And so I have talked to some of those mothers. Clinton Allen is one of the big infamous names for someone that was killed by law enforcement, but there's been a number of those cases that the prosecutors didn't even try. So honestly, I think that we've made some progress, just depending on where you are. This is Dallas though, right? Once again, we still have 254 counties. I can guarantee you that there are people that are being killed most likely every single day or every other day or way too frequently in some of these other counties in our states, and they don't even have progressive prosecutors that will say right is right, wrong is wrong, and let me prosecute. So I can't come up with a specific case. I will tell you that with the Botham Jean case, I'm very nervous. Yes. I am very nervous. I really would like to be a special prosecutor on that case because I am nervous that nothing is going to happen to Amber Geiger.
Right. There are questions that need to be answered, and definitely you need the right person asking them. Sometimes it's one thing that someone may overlook. What do you feel needs to happen differently, or what would you like to see happen differently for the mentality of police officers to, let's just say young black men, because we see a lot of that going on. What would you like to see different happen, or what could be different to change, like just the amount of things that are happening there?
Yeah, so we talk a lot about implicit bias. So when I end up on these panels, it's always, well, there needs to be implicit bias training. I'm really a hands-on type of person. A little bit more about my background. I started off in public school, but by the time I was in junior high, I ended up in private school, and half the time I made up the diversity. Even in talking about my experience in college, I was only one of maybe 10 black people in my class, even though my college was in the middle of Memphis, Tennessee. It was not a diverse situation. And it's one thing to sit somebody in a class for a couple of hours and say, hey, when you see a black person, don't be scared because they're just a person too. It's another thing to truly make sure that people are being integrated and having to interact. I know that there are people that probably disagree with the integration movement and some people that agree with it, but what it allows you to do is have real life experiences so that you can say, I shouldn't think that just because they're black, they're gonna come and attack me. And so, there are people that believe that we need to make sure officers are from the neighborhoods that they are patrolling, because you're not gonna walk, let's say if you're an officer that lives in Highland Park and you've been assigned to South Dallas, right? Like it's a little different because in Highland Park, you're probably not dealing with the same demographic of people that you're gonna find in South Dallas. So finding people that are either forced to actually interact with the people that are in their community, or finding people that wanna be officers that actually live within the community, it helps out as well. I know that it may not be the most popular thing to be as far as being an African American and say, hey, I'm gonna be a police officer, but you can probably help us if you're an actual police officer, because you're not just gonna kill us just because we black.
Facts. Now, Dallas is a city. We're one of the cities. We have the most millionaires in our city. We have the most. Well, we have the most. I feel like all the high rises and all the lofts being built, and the rent is going through the roof. But yet, there's so much poverty. And what effect do you think that has on the city as a whole?
We've got a serious problem. We've got a serious housing problem. Gentrification is so super duper real. You can probably go to any big city and find it, but it just seems like it's even worse here.
Right.
Because our population is just growing so fast that it's having to happen like consistently. Usually they kind of just sneak it in, and you wake up one day and you're like, oh, wait a minute, like, what happened to the hood? Like, this ain't what it used to be. But instead it's like, okay, we got to get these buildings up. And, the problem is that the middle class feels like it's being eroded away. And there's nobody, for instance, like I was talking about the taxes, like you can't say we need to fix the school system, so our solution is to increase the taxes on houses, because that's going to have a larger detrimental effect on, say, the middle class. And so as you continue to put the middle class into these positions where they're continually being strained, half of them are being actually put out of their homes because they can't afford the taxes. And so you can't continue to squeeze the middle class and then expect it to thrive. That's not really what it is. And we're living in a society that is pretty much only catering to those that are in the top 10% or so. But I mean, we're seeing that on a federal level, right? Everybody's talking about Trump's tax cuts right now because they were like, oh, well, he said they were gonna do this, but it looks like it only helped out the super duper rich. But anybody that was paying attention could have told you that that's what was going to happen. So we've got to do more to make sure that small and medium-sized businesses are thriving, because small businesses, that's our middle class. When we're just looking at big corporations, then that's going to be the rich folk. So it's interesting because, the mayor's race was a cluster, so to speak. I mean, I don't really know what other way to put it, but there were 9 people, actually 10 technically, but there were a lot of people running for mayor, right? Well, the candidate that I backed him because he understood the importance of having city officials that care about small businesses, that care about minorities, and wanted to help to grow them. DeSoto right now is dealing with an issue where they are going to try to write in a policy where they are going to mandate that a very small portion of their contracts go to African-American, I want to say it was African-American women-owned businesses, or minority-owned businesses. Minority women-owned businesses, sorry. But what you don't understand is most people don't understand how all this works. The city has all this money, and you're giving them your money every day in the form of some kind of taxes or whatever, but then when they're giving out contracts for everything that the city needs done, they're giving that contract out to not you. Let me
Not
just
you.
put it to not you. Let's just put it that way.
So now, if you are elected, what initiatives would you take to fix the problem of the poverty problem that we have in Dallas?
Yeah, so for me, I believe that poverty has a direct association with criminal justice as well as a direct association with mental health. And so what we see is every legislative session, no matter if it's a state level or federal level, the legislature always wants to cut back on money as it relates to mental health. And I think that we need to put more money into mental health. I think that we can get more people out of poverty. There are people that believe that because you have a mental illness that somehow you're incapable. And it's just not true. It's just like if I cut my leg right now, I need to go to the doctor, I need to get my leg stitched up, but once my leg is stitched up, then I can walk and I can do everything that I need to do. We've got the same issues and we've got such a huge stigma on mental health. If we can stabilize a lot of people, then I think that we can get them out of poverty and get them to be in positions to be able to actually work. So I actually want to put more money into mental health and make sure that we are stabilizing those that are suffering and get them out of poverty and get them to be productive citizens.
Now, as the issue of mental health goes with African Americans, it's usually taboo. We don't address mental health. We just live with it. We just make it our little personal thing, you know, just our little prisons. So why would you say that? What would you say? How would we fix that? As far as, because honestly, if you don't know you have a problem or you don't want to deal with the problem, then it can never be fixed anyway. So what's the fix for that, you think?
So unfortunately, I absolutely agree with you, right? We run into this problem where, and let me be clear, my father's a preacher, so I don't want anybody feeling no kind of way, right? But it's like, if we've got a problem, the answer is to go to church. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't go to church. I am saying that just like if you cut your leg, you may pray about it, but you also gonna see that doctor to make sure that you get stitched up, right? So I think that we've got to work on the stigma, I think, as a community, because I think it's really, really bad in the Black community because nobody wants to be labeled a certain thing. And if we finally start to embrace that it's no different than I'm a diabetic and so I need my insulin, it doesn't matter. It's just a different part of our body that needs some kind of assistance and help. And I think that we do need more people trying to dispel the stigma so that people will go out and seek the treatment that they need. And it can be, you know, just like, you know, if you're a diabetic, that's something that you potentially are gonna have to live with for the rest of your life. And then you can have some sort of mental illness that literally could just be temporary, right? Just like if I cut my leg, then it's gonna heal really quickly. There are people that are suffering from some bout of depression, some bout of PTSD because of some incident that has happened in their lives. And it's sad because it can turn you into this kind of downward spiral where, like for instance today, I was dealing with, he was a Marine. He got out of the Marines in 1969. And I was representing him today on a possession under a gram for heroin case. So he's facing felony time. He has a walker. He has a breathing machine. He has congestive heart failure. He is in bad, bad shape. And the answer is not to send him to prison. Let me be clear. Now, granted, I'm in a county where I'm not gonna have any big problems, but I've got someone that I could ask directly and say, hey, when did you start using and how long have you been using? It was directly related to his service. Right. And once he got out of service in 1969, he has been using heroin on and off ever since then, and we're in 2019. That is crazy. But it's a real deal thing, and you know what? It's probably easier to use the drugs than it is to just address the underlying issue of the trauma that was caused as a result of the service that he gave to our country.
And the terrible part about that is that a lot of these the men in the service, they have access to those drugs over there, and it's not even looked at as anything because it's whatever gets you through at that point.
Absolutely.
But when they come home with these addictions, now it's illegal or they're labeled with whatever stigma just because. But that's a whole nother thing. We're coming off of a documentary this week that I'm sure everybody's seen at this point. If you haven't, you should look at it, When They See Us. What was your take on that?
So I haven't been able to watch the entire thing.
Most people can't.
Episode 4 is hard.
I watched episode 1 and I haven't been able to go any further. So you asked me earlier about, do I carry certain things with me? And I was reading about how the director made a point of making sure that there were grief counselors on set for this. And I know the end result, right? Like, everybody knows the story. We know that ultimately they were convicted. So I know where this is going. Like, I know where we're gonna get to. And we know that these babies were thrown into prison for something that they had nothing to do with. And it just only made that burden that I carry so much heavier that I've not been able to watch the second episode just yet because I would be devastated if I was one of those lawyers that somehow failed those babies. Like, as a defense attorney, I am kind of like your last chance. It is my responsibility to protect your rights. It is my responsibility to make sure if there are racist people that are going to be sitting on this jury, to make sure they get off. It is my responsibility to make sure that there is a good record, so even if things go wrong, there is an appellate attorney that can come behind me and undo all of this. And so sitting there watching that and knowing all the cases that I have, and especially the few that are really, really near and dear to my heart, I just personally haven't been able to get through any more episodes. But I think that is important for our stories to get out, because for so long we've been ignored, and I think that's kind of part of what goes into the title of the series, is when they see us, right? Because we've not been seen, we've not been a factor, and I still feel as if we're not. I was encouraged today while I was picking a jury, though, because I always ask, tell me about what legal shows you're watching right now. And so everybody says Law and Order, and they kind of go through whatever they're watching. So I decided to ask, has anybody seen When They See Us? And it was an older white gentleman who was like one of the first people to say that he watched it. And I had to ask him, I said, did you watch the entire series? And he said, yeah. And I was like, okay. You know, it takes all of us doing our part. I'm not a director. I know nothing about film or whatever. But the fact that Ava has decided that she is going to deal with these very controversial issues, she's making her contribution to society through her actual talent and making sure that this message is being displayed. And so I applaud her for her efforts, but I personally haven't been able to watch the whole thing.
Definitely. And you were saying, you know, even going through jury selection, and it's a part of your process to make sure, you know, you're picking and things of that nature. You know, being in law, can you see how when someone did not commit a crime, the evidence is not there against them, but maybe one statement can go against them and they could be convicted? Have you seen those happen? Like, you know, this was clear cut, but the jury chose otherwise.
Absolutely. So, unfortunately, in the state of Texas, we have what we call the one witness rule. And I say unfortunately, but it's a fortunate thing too. The way that I normally describe it is it's really for the protection of women. So most of the time, if a woman is in a situation where, say, she's raped, usually there's not going to be 50 witnesses. Usually there's not going to be, you know, camera footage. Usually it's going to be in an intimate type of setting, and it's her word against his. That's all you got, right? And so without the one witness rule, then people that commit rape would potentially just walk, because 9 times out of 10, that's the only person that you may have to testify. So I say all that to say that the one witness rule, though, gets applied across the spectrum. So literally, it doesn't matter what kind of case it is. Technically, a prosecutor only has to bring one person. That's it. And that is a very scary idea, that somebody can go to prison because one person said something. And the law says if you believe that person beyond a reasonable doubt, that is enough to send someone to prison. And so I do feel as if I have experienced jurors getting it wrong. A case that sits with me is I'm licensed in Texas and Arkansas, and so I had a rape case last year. I don't think my client did it at all. I don't think he did it. Jurors came out crying, talking to me. I felt like I failed him because I didn't understand why he got convicted. They did give him the least sentence that they could give him, and they were crying. So I'm like, why y'all crying? You know, like, why would you be crying if this is what you truly wanted to do? And I just want to, number one, encourage people, law enforcement ain't your friend. I mean, I know I'm supposed to be over here like we're going to have a kumbaya on police and us, right? But as far as a law enforcement officer's job is to investigate and interrogate, okay? So they're not doing you a favor when they're interrogating you. And people don't realize that sometimes, even if they're not guilty, saying certain stuff causes a problem. So in this particular situation, he knew he had not had sex with this girl. He knew he hadn't had sex. And so law enforcement was like, well, we want to swab for DNA.
All right. So I have a question as far as, you just being a lawyer. I'm assuming you've handled, have you handled divorces, family law?
I have.
Okay. So my question to you is this, as far as a man leaving a situation to which he has a child, and of course child support is a big thing on men as far as how do we just don't know. We have no idea how do we go about it. We feel the woman has all the cards and we have nothing. What are some things that a man could do right now if he has a child and he knows they're a little rocky, that he can start preparing for his future and making sure he's secure and, making sure things go according to what he may want as well?
I feel like you're asking me for like the bootleg advice.
Yeah, the bootleg advice as far as...
Which I usually try to avoid doing, especially on camera. But I will just say this.
Screenshots.
Hypothetically, right? Just hypothetically speaking. Child support is supposed to be set at a minimum kind of number. And so some men say, you know what, I'm not going to go get on child support or whatever. That's a mistake. Definitely put yourself on child support, because you may be all good right now, but as soon as you get that new boo or whatever the case may be, then she in her feelings, and then the next thing you know, she's acting like you ain't never done nothing and you don't have anything to back you up. And so not only are you on child support, but you got back child support. So I suggest to everybody, if you've got a situation, if y'all good, not good, whatever, go put yourself on child support. Now, how do we come up with the child support number? That is based on your income. So people that say have businesses may be in a little bit of a different situation than, say, somebody who just works for somebody and gets all their money that way. That's probably the best way I can put it.
Got you.
Because, the way that businesses turn their profits and things like that are a little bit different versus if you're collecting a check from somebody and it's a specific amount every month. I think that so many times people feel as if child support is punishment, because there are a lot of women out there that are trying to make it punishment. But it really should be a minimal amount. So, but you don't want to be in a situation where, say, you've got a savvy attorney on the other side where you're saying, well, I'm just a struggling whatever, and so my business has not made a bunch of money, so this is my income situation. But then your baby mama is able to show on social media how you taking trips and cruises and all this other kind of stuff. So,
social media.
Living your life out loud isn't necessarily the best thing when you're going through those types of scenarios. So I will say to make sure that you keep your life private anytime you're going to court for anything, whether it's a car accident, whether it's a criminal case, whether it's a dispute over custody, or just in general child support. If you're going to be in court, you need to be conscious of the footprint that you leave in this world with social media.
AKA look broke. You don't got it. Quit acting like you got it. That's how you got here in the first place, brother. Right. Now, we do have a lot of things going on with abortion right now, as far as they're making it to where basically it's illegal to get abortion. And there's a movement is don't let a man decide what's good, what a woman does with her body. That's the movement. But as far as the law is concerned, what is your take on that?
So I think as it relates to abortions, I feel as if the law is clear. I feel like it's been made clear by Roe v. Wade, end of story.
There you go.
So once again, people don't understand the power of going, say, to the legislature. Because what we're running into now is that people are saying, you know what, forget what the Supreme Court has said, forget precedents. We're going to find a way to legislate around that. Now, I think that some of the states, including Texas and Alabama, that are, it's all in the South for the most part, that are trying to legislate around Roe v. Wade will find themselves in federal court for a federal judge to decide whether or not whatever laws they are attempting to put into place are constitutional based upon what has already been set as precedents in Roe v. Wade. As relates to my position, I am pro-choice. That doesn't mean that I'm anti-life, though. Like,
no, I think everybody understands.
Yeah, like people get all that like confused, but I've had friends. I was really heartbroken about 2 years ago when one of my friends found out she was pregnant. So I don't have any, or at that time, I didn't have any friends that had any little babies that were right near me that I could go play with and then give back. So I really wanted her to have this baby so I could have a little baby to play with and then give back. And she had an Apple Watch, so technology does do something great for us. And her Apple Watch kept telling her that her heart rate was like too high. She felt fine, but her Apple Watch was like continually going off. So she went to urgent care just to see what was going on. And urgent care said, you need to go into your physician. And when she went into her doctor, the doctor said, you got a 50-50 chance of living if you continue to carry this baby. Now, if she would have decided to continue to carry that child and died, you can't have a baby without a mama, right? So like, it's just kind of like just stupid stuff that doesn't make sense to me. And she was further along than what a lot of these bills that are being passed would have allowed for her to do anything about. And so forcing her to, you know, make that kind of decision, or not allowing her to make that kind of decision, is just wrong. And frankly, we're supposed to live in the land of the free. Not everybody is a Christian. Not everybody believes in this pro-life anthem, and my problem with it is that we are only pro-life until that life gets here, and then we're saying, you know what, this woman couldn't afford to have this baby or these 10 babies or however many, but we're not going to do anything to assist her because we don't care about a life once it's here. We only care about a life when it's really not even a life. It's just in the womb. So yeah.
What do you think the causes is between people in officials in government or office trying to have this type of control over people, period? Like, because I've read a lot of things like we can't even get any marijuana bills passed this fast or any gun laws changed this fast, but this is just like it seems like it's spreading like at a rapid pace.
Yeah, and there's no issue, right? We've got issues with these big mass shootings all over the country, but no one can figure that out, right? And that is something that we will all agree is a problem, right? Like no one is saying, no, we don't have enough mass shooting. Like everyone will agree that that's a problem. No one has said that there is a problem as relates to abortion. I could see if, we were finding a problem with a lot of the professionals that are doing this, but unfortunately, abortions won't stop. What this will do is it will put more lives in danger because they do not have proper access to this medical treatment, and so therefore there will be a black market. We have seen what happens when medical procedures are performed on a black market. We have seen countless women recently dying because of butt injections, because they are going and getting butt injections on a black market. So I think that if anything, we would prefer to make sure that we have some sort of authority or oversight over these procedures to make sure that people are safe. But I did recently read this interesting article that I thought was so funny. I don't know that I thought it was funny, but it said that Caucasian Americans are dying at a higher rate than they are actually being born.
Yeah, that is true, I think.
So, with what's happening with the lack of a growth rate in white America, but it's not the same for Black America or Hispanic America or Asian America. And if the trend continues to go this way, then we're going to be put in a situation where the majority will become the minority.
You got 300 years. Get your affairs in order.
Right. And
it's, because like I said, this is all educational. It's good to hear, pick a brain that actually knows something about it. So I have to ask you, the next time a young black man is driving down Forest Lane or wherever, and he gets pulled over and he knows he's done nothing wrong, he's just waiting to see what the inevitable is for the reason why he got pulled over. And some of us know why he probably just a check. You know, sometimes you just got to do a check. What would you suggest as far as a man who, let's say, knows the law, knows a little bit of the law, approach that situation as far as just dealing with police officers?
Yeah, so I'm always saying just get home. That's all I care about. I want, and it's hard for me to be docile because I'm the opposite, right? But play along and get along, right? And I'm not saying go through some horrible experience and then just let it go. But what I am saying is that I want more of us to get home. And there's always this rhetoric that we get every time we speak up. And we can be absolutely right, but because you decided to speak up and you were talking to a law enforcement officer, the next thing you know, it was your fault that he killed you. Like, it's absolutely ridiculous, right? But if you go ahead and just say, yes, officer, no, officer, yes, sir, no, sir, whatever, you make sure you get his badge number. You make sure you call in and you complain on that officer. Let me tell you, it does a couple of things. When that officer then goes out and say, kill somebody or beat somebody or almost kill somebody, the only way that we as lawyers can get the city on the hook is if the city was actually on notice. It's not just that this officer worked for the city. It has to be that the city actually knew this was a bad officer, but they didn't give him any training. They kept him employed. They didn't do anything. They ignored it, and we have to show that. So we look at their disciplinary records. So you may actually be saving the next person or that person's family the heartache of the city saying, oh, well, we didn't know, and so, yeah, he killed him, but we ain't giving you no money. It's not acceptable. So we've all got to do our part. Not everybody's going to get out there and protest. Not everybody's going to call in. You know, we all have our parts that we can play. So if you're in that kind of scenario, my suggestion is to do whatever it takes to get home, especially if you know that what they're doing is wrong. And then you make sure you call and you get that elaborated and you follow through with your complaint.
Now, I just learned this recently. I did not know this, but I just learned that when the city gets sued, the taxpayers pay for it. What,
I'm not going to say that.
Okay, because I was like...
I'll give you clarification on it, but I'm not going to say that.
Okay.
So just like we're required to have car insurance on our cars, the city is required to have insurance too.
Okay.
So, you know, they've got insurance policies. The larger the city, obviously, the bigger the policy. You know, obviously, I guess the taxpayers can ultimately pay for it because if you're hit too many times on an insurance policy, what happens? Your insurance goes up, right? So in an indirect way, the city becomes directly at risk if, say, the city does not have enough insurance. So it's just like if you get in a car wreck and you have like the minimum policy, but you kill somebody. And so the family decides, you know what, I'm going after you because this little $25,000 policy, what if that's not going to do it? Well, then they can get their first $25,000 from the policy if they get a verdict. Anything in excess of that, they can then attach to your personal assets if you've got any assets. So it's the same way with the city. So if the city of Dallas only had $1 million policy and they decided, say in the Botham Jean case, that they weren't going to settle. And so then they went to court and they got a $5 million verdict. Well, the $1 million for the policy will cover the first $1 million, but the city gonna have to find the other $4 million.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I actually had a question earlier. Do you, and not sure if you're able to answer this, but do you think protesting is more effective or suing the city when we have?
I think you need it all. You gotta sue though. I mean, people don't feel nothing until it hits their pockets, right? Like when you think about it, like the city of Dallas, it's not gonna stop functioning. So if you've got, say, a private corporation such as McDonald's, right? McDonald's may say, you know what, we don't want no problems because you're gonna hit my pockets if you put all this bad press out about something. The city, they're still gonna get their money from taxpayers and whatever, so bad press doesn't do anything to them. We've seen that in Fort Worth. Fort Worth has messed over I don't know how many cases, and they don't care, right? The only thing that makes a city wake up is when you hit them in their pockets. I think protests have their purpose, but I definitely think the nail in the coffin is a lawsuit.
You know, I got to ask you, I know you said traveling is a thing you like to do, but I have to ask a lawyer, what is your favorite law movie?
My favorite law movie, A Time to Kill.
Yes, they deserve to die, and I hope they. That was good, man. That was good, man. I mean, that was some good acting. Man. That was some good acting. And when it comes to, and of course, I want to make sure that you definitely again tell them how to get there and vote, how to when the election is happening, even to follow you, because. After people watch this, they, like I was telling you earlier, they don't know who to call sometimes, and sometimes it's just good to just have somebody on call. I mean, how many calls do you get just on like just questions?
I have no idea.
You don't, yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah, somebody knows. Because people just want to consult a lawyer at times. You just don't know, and it's good to have one in the family. So we definitely gonna keep your number on our end as well. Tell them what websites.
So for the campaign. Every social media, anything that we have is at Jasmine 4100, and the 4 is spelled out. And then my actual firm website is www.jasminecrockett.com. Very simple, it's just my name. And once again, the campaign website is jasmine4100.com. And then, of course, the campaign telephone number is 469-JAS-4100. And then you can also text. Keep it real. No, keep it 100. Sorry.
I like that. Keep it 100. Man.
At 444-999.
Any other questions from the? We got a lawyer here. Anybody got any other questions? Nobody. Any tickets you got? Warrants?
Let me also say this. I want to be clear. I plan to do like a Know Your Rights type of event.
There you go.
Because I definitely want to make sure that we are incorporating those that most want to forget. Because I think that their voices matter probably more than some of ours who have never been through certain circumstances. And so in the state of Texas, you have the right to vote even if you've been convicted of a felony. Once you are completely done with your sentence, meaning you're not on probation, you're not on parole, but you're completely done, you then are eligible to vote. And I want to encourage people that have been through the system to make sure that they get out and they vote, because I am going to be fighting for your rights above and beyond so many other things. And so I think it's important for you to tell your story and let people know why it's important for you to have another chance. Because while everybody wants to say that once you get out of prison, then you're brought back into society and you're all good, basically they just let you out of prison. That's all that happens. But you don't truly get reintegrated. And so I want you to know that you've got the right to vote. I want you to care about voting. I want you to have a voice when it comes to picking the judges that will make a decision about maybe loved ones that you have. I want you to have a voice when it comes to the person that's actually going to write the laws that will affect what rights you do and don't have. So make sure if you've ever been in trouble that you do exercise your right to vote.
And there you go. You had it, man. Speaking on mental health, speaking on criminal injustice, on poverty. I mean, like I said, you're very well-rounded, and definitely, you got our vote here on the Real Life Street Stars. But Jasmine, we definitely appreciate you coming. Sit down. Don't be a stranger. Definitely come. We might have to have a segment of this going on just for answering questions about law. But definitely welcome at any time to come back, and we'll definitely want to have you back. But yes, we definitely salute you, our Real Life Street Star, Jasmine Crockett.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shout out Reallyfe Street Stars, nigga. Move it. Hey.